I'm going to talk about Selling With by Nate Nasralla. I really thought this was a very interesting approach to writing a book. He talks about the art of selling with champions, and when he speaks about champions, he's talking about those who are internal to your buyer base. These are people that you sell to. So you are turning your buyers into champions. And I really thought this would be an interesting book to review because it actually does tremendous justice to a topic which might be a small couple of pages, maybe a chapter in any other book. Nate's actually had tremendous courage. He ends up writing this really comprehensive guide, which I thought was an extremely, immensely powerful way of looking at something which should get more time and more attention. I'm grateful that he actually took that effort to put this together. I'm really enjoying doing this review for you guys. So who is Nate? Nate is the co-founder of Fluent. It's a platform that he set up for B2B sales teams to win deals, and not in the room as he calls it. He's got tremendous experience. He's got years of enterprise sales experience. And he also realized something very, very simple. Sales reps don't close deals in isolation. Buyers help them. Buyers do make them sell, help them sell. His insights into what he calls champion creation and buyer enablement have really reshaped the way that a lot of people would approach modern sales. His approach has helped countless sellers navigate complex deals. He shares tons of frameworks, frankly, in this book. He has some tremendous narratives, and he has some well laid out strategies that turn prospects into advocates. So I'm going to talk about 10 learnings that I got from his book, and I must be honest, there's so much in here that I really struggle to choose which 10 to talk about, but let's just talk about 10 in the interest of time. And he starts up by saying that, hey, you now have a new sales job description, which is the biggest explanation. Selling is just not about pitching solutions. It's about empowering your buyers to pitch for you. You heard that right. Your job is to co-create a solution they can champion within their organization. You're focused on not an amorphous blob. You're focused on a specific individual or specific group of individuals who become your champions. Your pain point that Nate is solving for is very simple. Sellers lose deals because they don't influence internal conversations happening without them. And this is where Nate gets into a lot of information and a lot of strategies on how to co-create, how to give the tools, how to align your process with the internal decision-making process, how to partner with your champion to build internal materials like pitch decks, business cases, and FAQs. Thinking of these tools as your silent sales reps is one powerful actionable tip that I felt was very important. How to integrate that into your new sales job description when you are selling into enterprise accounts. Learning number 2, he calls building your pipeline around buying behavior and bias. That's interesting. So you're not just building a pipeline around opportunities around your objectives, but you're actually getting in deep. Buyers don't move through a pipeline in a straight line. They revisit stages, they rethink their decisions, and they struggle with internal biases. Your sales process has to adapt to that reality. The pain that you are going to solve for, which Nate is calling out, is that you have situations where your deals stall. They fall apart because sellers don't anticipate the messy, non-linear nature buying decision. You as a seller need to understand that your deals will stall. New executives join mid-process, right? And they start asking, why is this urgent? Why are we looking at this? They are entitled to go back and relook at the problem statement and make you redo all the work and effort you've done till then. You need to understand and you need to create flexible pipeline stages, as Nate calls them. These are based on buyer behavior such as stakeholder alignment or budget approval. Always revisit earlier steps when a new decision maker joins. Don't take things for granted. Revisit, re-strategize, reprioritize, and come back with a different game plan. Learning number 3, the buyer's emotional journey. Buying is an emotional process. We talk about emotions a lot. You need to make your buyer feel confident, excited, and reassured to move forward. If you do that, if you get that emotional momentum, your deal won't stall. The inverse will happen if you don't get it though. So the pain point that Nate is talking about here is that buyers disengage when they feel overwhelmed or unsure about the decision. Your job, therefore, is to take them through a process, either through critical meetings, pausing during a presentation and asking a simple question. What excites you about solving this challenge? This shifts the conversation. It builds excitement, builds confidence to move forward. The tip that I would give you that I got from the book, which I really thought was powerful, was you need to focus on identifying emotional dips during the sales cycle. Look at what happened post-demo. Look what's happening during a legal review. Then focus on addressing those with testimonials, live examples, or small wins. that build excitement. Learning number 4, the discovery roadmap. Discovery is something that many salespeople do talk about, and there's a lot of material out there on it. Nate takes a very simplistic approach to it. It's not just about gathering information, it's about helping buyers uncover their own challenges and create that urgency to act. Urgency is important, guys. Sellers often fail to build urgency because they don't dig deep enough during discovery conversations, and that is a big pain for us. So Nate talks about a couple of examples. He actually talks about a couple of scenarios in the book, and I really thought that was a great perspective he gave it. How to make this work is very simple. The tip that he offers is prepare questions that explore deep pain points and consequences of those pain points. What's the ripple effect of this problem on your team? What is the ripple effect of this problem outside your team, downstream, maybe upstream? You start seeing the problem in the context of the bigger organizational structure. Learning number 5, writing and framing compelling problem statements. That's related to learning number 4 to some degree. But the point here is that Nate talks about creating an explanation around a clear, quantified problem statement which aligns all stakeholders and justifies urgency. It's the foundation for every successful deal. And I think there used to be this entire conversation on compelling events, and I think Nate takes it to a slightly different level. The pain that you're trying to solve for is that deals will stall when stakeholders cannot agree on the problem or its impact. You gotta make sure that that doesn't happen. And the way you do that is that you shift the conversation from abstract discussions to actionable items, solutions that help. Clarity provided at that stage will help leadership to come to the table. You simply get buy-in from all the stakeholders. So the formula that he talks about, which he calls an actionable tip, is simply that, hey, when you're talking about problem statements, despite something, we still can't do something which has caused a specific cost or risk. You get those 3 strung together, you believe that would help getting to a compelling problem statement. Learning number 6, the art of crafting internal narratives. Ooh, this is important, guys. Internal narratives are how your champion pitches your solution within their organization. It's not how you pitch it to them, right? Your view on ROI, your view on features, benefits is jaundiced. What you need to do is you need to understand how can your buyers co-create or position this for greatness. You as a seller must work with your buyer to co-create stories to ensure alignment. The pain point typically is that you as a seller typically will realize that buyers are failing to communicate your value effective to other stakeholders, which may potentially lead to lost deals because you now have this entirely uncoordinated effort internally where the inner circle kicks in when something goes wrong. So Nate talks about, and he gives a couple of examples as to how he helped a customer or a buyer co-create a one-page executive summary that focused on the corporate goals. That summary then became the buyer's internal pitch and was used to secure approvals. All that really means an actionable tip is that you're going to partner with your champion to create simple, compelling internal narratives, focus on metrics, strategic alignment, and clear next steps. But the language that you're using is their language, not your language. You're not selling. You are actually doing a job of aggregating all the information and putting it through the lens of what resonates with the rest of the buyers when your champion buyer takes it back to them. Learning number 7, multi-threading and navigating dysfunctional buying groups. Ooh, that's a mouthful. But in simple terms, it simply means that you have to understand that in a complex deal, you're looking at multiple people, multiple champions potentially. So if you're going to rely on one champion, it's a risk you're taking here. Multi-threading simply forces you to consider the reality that there may be multiple advocates across the buying team that you need to work with. And the pain point here is that typically, when I've seen it myself in my own career and with the sales reps that I work with, deals fall apart and will fall apart because you have too many stakeholders who are either excluded or disengaged during the standard buying seller dance. A seller can actually help work on a stakeholder map of sorts, reach out directly to understand concerns from this multitude of people, figure out who really matters, find a second advocate, find a third advocate, figure out those advocates that strengthen your deal. The actionable tip is very simple here, guys. Go beyond the traditional inner circle discussion. Figure out who actually matters, who are the various decision makers and influencers that will be part of the process. Identify them early. Use your champion to then help engage with these silent stakeholders who may suddenly get a voice at the worst possible time for you, right? Learning number 8, building mutual action plans. The word mutual is so key here. You're building a mutual action plan, or they just simply calls it an MAP or a map. It's a shared roadmap. It aligns you and your buyer on what needs to happen to close the deal. And the reality is the pain you're solving for is that deals usually get stuck because there's no clear understanding of next steps. Your agenda with this MAP is to make sure that those steps are recorded. So you're going to sit down with your stakeholder, with your champion, and you're going to create a simplistic plan that brings in milestones, maybe a pilot. You're going to talk about when do budgets get approved, how do budgets get approved. You're going to figure out a way to track progress together. And then you're going to simply realize that bringing in the MOP process early is going to help you. By bringing that in, your actionable tip that I got from that book is pretty simple. You're going to figure out a way to assign responsibilities for both sides, not only your elements, but also the elements that you expect the champion to position and help you with. Learning number 9, running demos that don't suck. Yep, easier said than done, right? All he's talking about is that understand your demo is an extremely critical element of your sales process. Your demos have to be tailored to the buyer's needs and focus on solving their specific problems, not showing off features, which is something that happens all the time. Now, the pain you're solving for is pretty simple. You want to make sure that your buyer is not disengaged when your demos start feeling generic or overly technical. You need to find that right balance. You need to find that right pitch. Nate gets into quite a lot of conversation around what were the specific techniques or methodologies that they used of how they opened their demos by directly addressing a buyer's biggest pain point. They speak about the personalization that they put together into it, and then they also talk about how they led very deep discussions around implementation. When you bring implementation focus in, you're actually taking the conversation into the future. And trust me, when you bring the conversation in the future, you're actually helping your customer visualize success in the future. And that is a huge win. So the actionable tip that I got was just ask yourself before the demo, what's the one thing you want to solve today? And then build the demo around their answer. When your customer tells you what that one thing is, build your demo around that one thing. Learning number 10, which is the last learning from the book, is creating authentic buying urgency. Urgency drives action, but it has to be rooted in real consequences, not artificial deadlines. So the problem is that typically we have situations where a deal will linger in a pipeline because your buyer lacks a clear reason to act. Why should I do something? What compels me to do it? What is that compelling event, that compelling eventuality? Here, Nate actually gets into quite a lot of conversation around how he had a scenario where the seller tied the buyer's timeline to an upcoming market shift, showed the competitive advantage of acting early, and this alignment and secured a quick decision. Now, you can use the same scenario, and the tip that I would give you is that during discovery, you could potentially take an angle. What happens if this doesn't get solved in the next 6 months? By putting questions like that in, you're actually creating a scenario where you will use their answer to create a compelling timeline. And that makes a lot of sense, because when you create timelines which are based on their responses, based on their data, then understand one thing: most customers will never challenge their own data on their own timelines. And that's extremely critical in sales. Right. 10 learnings, I've shared them with you. There's so much else good stuff in this book here. Simply, let me close up by saying, winning enterprise sales is just not about what you say in the room. It's about what happens when you're not there. Who fights for you behind closed doors is something very incredible. And I think Nate does a fantastic job of bringing an angle which a lot of people may not have thought of. I think it's a game-changing guide. It redefines the role of a salesperson. It teaches us and it tells us about the value of partnering with your buyers, empowering them to become your champions. And with that empowerment, you're actually giving them the ability to be fighters for you. And it's these internal dynamics that will help you win the complex deals. This book just doesn't teach you how to sell. It teaches you how to win. I honestly believe that. Great job, Nate. Great job.